Obviously, if we can, with what is going on, this is a truly horrific situation. I won't go through what's going on again, but Israel now has sent the first troops in. We've just found out the IDF has said there will be a safe passage for the people of Gaza to move south of the region until 2 o'clock UK time today. Charlie, Israel is faced with an impossible situation here. An attack by terrorists, not by Palestinians, by a terrorist organisation, by Hamas, on people who were going to a concert, whose lives were shattered, people murdered in cold blood. People are having breakfast. I don't want to talk about the atrocities that are going on. But Israel is in really an impossible situation, as Simon Diggins was saying.
I mean, I think, first of all, it is important to just address the fact that, yeah, the images coming out of Israel and Gaza are just horrific. You know, it's things that nobody should have to see. It's just awful stuff. My position on this is, you know, I've been interested in politics for several years now. Israel and Palestine is an issue that I've never really touched because I find it to be a very, very contentious issue because there are victims on both sides. There are atrocities over the years, over the 70 or so years that the conflict has been going on in its current form, at least. You know, there are terrible victims on both sides. And I think we have a very recent example, actually, in Russia and Ukraine of a conflict that, you know, in the first few days and weeks of it, happening, a lot of people came out and said a lot of very silly things that look really tasteless and bad looking back on it now, because I think the fog of war is kind of impenetrable at this kind of stage. So I'm not keen on sort of taking sides on this issue because I think actually the prudent thing to do is to just wait and see.
Not taking sides, that's interesting, but surely you have to take sides in that innocent people were murdered by terrorists.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely not denying that fact. I mean, again, the images coming out and the statements by the Israeli authorities seem to suggest that, I mean, literally thousands of people have been, innocent people, children, have been killed. But frankly, we in Britain know better than most that Islamist fundamentalists are not above killing and raping innocent people because we've frankly had a fair bit of that on our own shores.
Well, let me ask you, Stella, and I wonder what your thoughts are on this. Are people frightened to speak out about what is going on, do you think?
I don't agree that people in the UK are necessarily frightened to speak about this. I definitely don't think that people who are pro-Israel have been frightened to speak about this on social media. I certainly have been seeing a lot from both political commentators, from the media class, from politicians speaking in favor of Israel. I do think what we have seen...
Don't bang the desk, though, yeah.
Absolutely, you're quite right.
I'm very, very strict.
What we have seen, I think, in the last week is when the news first broke about the missiles hitting Israel...
So a week ago, exactly a week ago, because I did it.
Exactly a week ago. The first thing that happened is we saw some people making some misjudged comments, defending Hamas and saying that this is the liberation of Palestinians and this is what decolonization looks like, so what did you expect? Just vibes, all of that. These people were then forced very quickly to roll back. But what we have been seeing in the last few days, in my opinion, is now people are starting to realize what defending Israel by any means necessary actually means, which means seeing similar atrocities in Gaza means ethnic cleansing. And we have yet to see these people.
Why do you say ethnic cleansing?
Back.
Surely what Israel is doing, it has a right to defend its sovereign country. It is fighting back against terrorists. Now, you're right, there's collateral damage. Now, it's very clear under the Geneva Convention. Any response must be proportionate. That's where Israel really struggles with this, I think.
Collateral damage, you have the Gaza Strip, a place the size of Birmingham, with 2.5 times the population of Birmingham. They've been bombed with 6,000 bombs in the last day, and you have 1.1 million people being told that they have 24 hours to evacuate. And we are talking about this deadline has just... the deadline was Saturday morning. We already have reports of envoys full of people trying to flee Gaza City who have been bombed by the Israeli bombs. I think this is ethnic cleansing.
It's going to be wiped out. So you're saying Israel is wrong in its approach?
I do think Israel is wrong. I condemn these actions by Israel.
And of course, you're not alone in that. The UN also condemns it. The UN has urged restraint. Many people urging restraint. It's just in an impossible situation. Of course, Stella is right. Scenes of chaos, people packing all their stuff into cars, into donkey-drawn carts. imagine you have nothing, you suddenly have nothing, and you're fearing for your lives, you're desperately trying to get across Gaza before you are bombed, or indeed there's a ground incursion. We know Hamas has encased themselves within civilians there. They've built all these tunnels. The people who will suffer are innocent civilians, aren't they?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, as you say, there's been, well, again, terrible footage coming out from both sides. It's just an impossible issue, this. I really do think it is. And the other thing is, as well, you know, with the kind of left-wing types who came out in support of Hamas and Palestine, as you said, there were various people citing decolonisation literature, which I read at university, actually, Frantz Fanon and others, who actively, they just openly say violence is like a cleansing force, you know, for the colonised and all the rest of it. So it's absolutely no surprise.
And stop banging the table.
Apologies.
It's not an impossible issue. I'm pretty sure there are diplomatic efforts that happen behind the scenes. However, there are solutions. I support the three-state solution, which means that Israel would continue having its own state, Gaza would have its own state, the West Bank would have its own state. It would be completely...
What happens with Jerusalem?
It stays with Israel. It would have to stay with Israel.
But here's the rub, isn't it? That would then not be acceptable, I think, to the Palestinian people.
Yes, they would have to accept it. I do think that at some point we know that the way to peaceful coexistence is to have each country to have its own borders.
But my understanding is that has also been mooted before. The Palestinians rejected that, didn't they?
But yes, they have rejected it, indeed. But I don't think the Israeli government has made any concessions whatsoever. And I think the fact that they have complete control of Gaza's water, electricity, and access to aid is going to make the negotiations very, very difficult. How do you expect to negotiate with people who you are starving and who you are actively telling them to starve, and basically they're all being killed as we speak?
I think that's a really good point, actually, the fact that there is this tremendous power imbalance between the two sides of this conflict. And for that reason, that's why I'm not keen to come out and pledge my allegiance to either side, because those who have come out and supported Hamas look evil. But frankly, you know, again, the fog of war is such that we don't actually really know exactly what's happening. So to come out and support Israel is just as risky.
That's a very interesting point. Charlie, let me just bring you in here. Is that the reason that actually people are scared to speak out? Is because actually they feel that they don't know enough about what's going on, and let's face it, it's a very complicated situation going back millennia in terms of the geopolitics of that area? Or is it also because they can see both sides? There are issues on both sides, as Stella says so eloquently. They're starving people who are innocent in Gaza.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, the first thing is, I think there's the lack of understanding. I think the length of time that the conflict, the history of the region has gone on for such a long time means that I think people find it quite complicated. We're not just talking about state to state, as we are with Russia invading Ukraine. We're talking about religious aspects as well, which I think, and the length of time, however long it goes on in people's minds, people tend to sort of just withdraw and think, oh, well, that's a very complicated issue, and actually I don't want to address it at all. But you have to address, I think, where we are. And for whatever problems and whatever the history and whatever the issues and wrongs that there have been on both sides, and I think, look, on a piece of paper and absolutely taking it as a neutral, it is totally wrong to sort of maybe cut off people's water, electricity and all the rest of it. But they are in control of that, and we are where we are today, which is where there is a terrorist organisation that has attacked a group of young people that have done terrible atrocities that we've seen on social media. That has to be called out.